Well, football fans, it is that time of the year again, man. Us fantasy football nerds and those of us who are just absolutely obsessed with NFL fantasy football, we don't start mock drafts. We don't start putting our rankings together in August. We do that in June, maybe even earlier. And today I'm excited. I'm very, very excited about this video. I'm going to give you guys my very early rankings, my top 10 running backs for the 2025 NFL season. Guys, if you love NFL fantasy football, I would highly suggest you check out the channel. I have a channel right now, Marquee Sports, that focuses a lot on the Denver Broncos, but I will be emphasizing quite a bit of NFL fantasy news and notes. And if you guys like it, like I said, be sure to like and subscribe. And maybe even I'll make a dedicated channel specifically for NFL fantasy if you guys like what I have to say. So, you know what, man? Let's have some fun today. Let's get it going. And let's start off with running back 10 for the 2025 NFL fantasy football season. And that is the guy, the ageless wonder, Derrick Henry. I mean, what else can we really say about Derrick Henry, man? He's been the model of consistency. He's been somebody that over the past few years, I've always avoided drafting him because I said eventually he's going to have to fall off. I understand that he is built like a superhuman at 6'3", 247 pounds, but I felt like he had to fall off. And you know what? He simply doesn't. He doesn't miss time. He's extremely durable. Phenomenal player, a lot of touchdown upside, and I think that you're going to just get somebody that has a very high floor. He might not necessarily have the highest ceiling as he enters his age 30 year, but you know what you're going to get with Derrick Henry. You're going to get somebody that's going to get a lot of touchdowns. Basically led the league in touchdowns over over the last 5 years by quite a bit. He also has led the NFL in rush yards per game over the last 5 seasons as well. Yards after contact. We know what he can do. And as a pure rusher, if it wasn't a PPR league, in a standard league, he's one of the best, and he's consistently been the best when it comes to from his ability as a fantasy football player from just purely running the ball. Now, the biggest downside that he's got, obviously, is that he doesn't have crazy high involvement in the pass game. It's actually quite limited. I think last year was his best year that he's ever had in a pass game standpoint, and it still wasn't all that pretty. They're going to probably start to mix in other guys, like maybe a Keaton Mitchell that they have there in Baltimore, or other running backs to try to keep Derrick Henry as fresh as possible, because you did kind of see him start to wear off a little bit towards the end of the season as they got into the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens have high aspirations to win a Super Bowl. They are in a Super Bowl window, and so I think preserving Derrick Henry is probably the smart thing. So that's why I have him at fantasy rank number 10. Obviously, all my rankings here are for PPR. That's how I'm doing it. That's kind of the standard league format. And so that's where we are now. So let's move on to my number 9. My number 9 is going to be Kyren Williams, man. This is somebody that's just been so consistent over the course of the last several years. He started off his career, definitely had a few injuries. There's no doubt about that. But he's been one of the most effective runners and one of the most productive and efficient runners in the NFL over the past couple of years, especially. He is, the first. He ranks first overall in fantasy points per game from running the football at 14, and he's also top 5 when it comes on a rushing per game basis. Yards after contact, all those really good metrics, rushing touchdowns. He, very similarly to Derrick Henry, is just in a very efficient running back. His yards after contact is phenomenal. He gets into the end zone a lot. And he had a little bit of a drop off last year compared to the year before, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was a little bit less efficient. And while he is utilized in the pass game, it's not anything overly crazy. He had 34 catches last year on 38 targets, but he's on the field a lot. His ability to be a really great pass protector is what keeps him on the field. He doesn't have a whole bunch of competition behind him. I mean, you got some young guys like Blake Corum, for example, that could take a few touches to keep him healthier. But Kyren Williams, man, what a good player he's been. Again, someone that never going to be the sexy name, but all he does is, all he is just extremely efficient. 14 rushing touchdowns last year, almost 1,300 yards. 4.1 average. He doesn't, he doesn't really fumble the ball that much. Forced missed tackles is good. And if he can continue to get better in the pass game, he can have an even higher ceiling. So yes, I get it. He's someone that, you're going to have a little bit of, you might have a little bit of injury concerns. There's no doubt about it, but he's still only 24 years old. And again, 16 total touchdowns last year with catching and running the football. With an 8% target share, it's going to be a little bit low. So it kind of is what it is. But I don't think you can go wrong with Kyren Williams, especially if you can get him sometime in the second round, maybe the early third, depending on how mock drafts go. I think he's just an unbelievably solid player overall, man. So I'm a big fan of Kyren Williams this year, no doubt about it. Number 8 is where you're going to have to put Christian McCaffrey. And I get it, guys. I get it. There's so much hesitation around him for obvious reasons. We can call it the Madden curse or whatever. But last year, basically his entire season was gone with the Achilles injuries, the tightness, the arthritis, whatever you want to call it. Very unfortunate for a lot of those fantasy football players. So listen, if you drafted him last year and he burned you and you're never going to draft him again, I 100% understand. I did that in one of my leagues, and I'm the kind of guy that's not going to touch him. But you cannot forget the fact, guys, that when he's healthy and when he plays, even if it's for 12 or 13 games, he's unbelievably efficient. 18.6% target share is going to be huge. That's, any involvement in the pass game just immediately raises the floor of Christian McCaffrey. Obviously an unbelievably talented runner. Yes, he's getting a little bit older at 29, and he does have a lot of wear and tear on the tires. I think best case scenario for him is he is kind of in a running back by committee. So he can stay fresh, so he can continue to remain very efficient, first and foremost. And if that's the case, he's going to be somebody that you're going to be really, really happy with, that you can, rely on to get 15 to 20 points basically every single week, even if he's getting limited touches. He's just that good. And the Shanahan scheme, I mean, say what you want about Kyle Shanahan as a coach. He's got his quirks, right? He's got his downfalls. But when it comes to getting efficiency out of the run game, man, oh man, is he good at doing that. I do believe that their offensive line is going to be more improved. I think they're going to rely upon the running game a little bit more in creative ways to try to take a little bit of pressure off of Brock Purdy. But the great thing about Christian McCaffrey is when he's healthy, he's the best pass catching back in the NFL, and he's arguably the best pure runner in the NFL as well. He's just that good. So he definitely is warranted to be on the top 10. I have him so far right now at number 8. Moving on to number 7, man, it's Josh Jacobs, right? And what can we say about Josh Jacobs? He's just someone that, for whatever reason, every year, nobody's really overly excited to draft Josh Jacobs. He's not going to be like the sexiest name. Even when he went from the Raiders to the Packers this past season, for whatever reason, people don't always get so pumped about him, but all he is just productive. He's, durable. He doesn't have a lot of injuries, and just super solid. He's a great overall runner. It makes guys miss. Again, he gets in the end zone. He finished last year, 17.2 points per game in PPR. But he's been in the league for a lot of years, and he's still only 24 years old. His target share took quite a leap last year at 9.3%. In fact, he had his first ever receiving touchdown, which is crazy. But just overall, extremely efficient player. Sorry, he's 27 years old. So he's still not, I still think he's got a couple of really good years left in him. No doubt about it. And I think you're going to get somebody that's just overall really solid. He's going to take a majority of the snaps in that offense. He played 62.5% of them last year, which is certainly less than what he had previously in his time with the Raiders. But it's still a good enough amount of snaps to be able to warrant him being a top 10 back, warrant him being even an RB1 on your team, no doubt about that. But the good thing about it is that, it made him stay fresh. It made him stay more efficient and more consistent throughout the course of the year by not putting all that stress on his body. Now, obviously, they got Marshawn Lloyd returning now this year after I believe he missed his rookie year. So that could eat into it as well. But my whole thing is, I think that the way that the NFL is going is the running back by committee is not always a bad thing, even in fantasy. Jahmyr Gibbs has proven that. Bijan Robinson has proven that it's not always about getting, a huge volume, but it's about getting the most efficiency out of those carries. I think that's what we've seen. And what the good about that is it's a lot more sustainable. That's what you'll kind of notice. So I love Josh Jacobs, man. I just think he's unbelievably good. He's someone that's so consistent. And that you're going to get you're not going to get the most amount of him in the past game. I mean, he had 36 catches last year, 342 receiving yards. But again, he did have that receiving touchdown. And he had 15 carries on the ground, over 1,300 yards, a 4.4 yards per carry average. And so he's just really good. And he was sixth in the NFL in explosive runs of 10 plus. So just overall, a very, very good player and someone that I think still got a year or two left of being very productive overall in fantasy football. Moving on to number 6 is De'Von Achane, one of my favorite players. I really, really think that he's going to be someone that rises higher on my board as the offseason goes. All this dude does is produce, man. He's so good. He's undersized back, right? 5'8", 188 pounds. That's always been something that was worrisome for me, but super young. I mean, still 23 years old. He's obviously shown that he can stay healthy and have some pretty decent durability. But in Miami, in the Mike McDaniel offense, just like coming from the Shanahan scheme, he's someone that is incredibly efficient. Took a pretty big hit in terms of his fantasy value last year once Tua went out and they had no threat from the passing game standpoint. But when Tua Tagovailoa did play, he averaged 22.5 fantasy points per game and just unbelievable amounts of efficiency for him. When Tua was not in, he had only 8.7. So that is a little bit concerning because there's a very, very big discrepancy in terms of when Tua plays and when Tua doesn't. But overall, man, the guy's one of the most talented runners. He really is. He's fantastic. 4.5 yards per carry average last year, 203 carries for 907 yards. So didn't get a whole bunch of carries, but where he did his damage, he was the number 1 in the NFL in terms of catching the ball at 78 receptions. He was number 1 when it came to route to run. He was number 2 in targets. He was 5th in terms of pass snaps. He was number 1 in terms of receiving touchdowns at 6. So that is what he does. Like, he is going to kill you in the pass game. And that is obviously extremely valuable for fantasy, while also having a pretty decent amount of rushing attempts as well. So you love to see it. These are the kind of running backs that you certainly want on your team. Somebody that can win on the ground, but also win in the air. That's what he does. 21 explosive runs of 10 plus, and that's not even taking into account the 592 receiving yards that he had on those 78 receptions. So very impressive player. Yes, you get a little bit worried once, because of the health of Tua, but they do have Zach Wilson now as their backup quarterback, who I think is significantly better than any backup quarterback that they've had. I think that he can still keep the train rolling. And the reason that Achane was affected so much by Tua is because of what he can do in the pass game. So if you're in a PPR league, De'Von Achane is definitely somebody that you would want to target. I think you can get him at a really good value as well. You're not going to have to draft him in the top 5. You might not even have to draft him in the first round, as his current ADP right now is 23.6. That's going to change a lot as more and more data comes in. But really good player, very talented overall, man. And I think he's someone that is extremely solid. I have it written here that he had 11 touchdowns. He actually had 12, so I did make a mistake there. But the 15.6% target rate is very, very good for somebody of his caliber. Like I said, just so damn talented. When you watch him, you can see the type of talent that he's got. Moving on to number 5, and this is tough because, when you have a rookie, you never really know what to expect, right? You can only judge it based off of what he did in college. And if that's the case, Ashton Jeanty is easily a top 5 running back in fantasy. Yes, he's playing for the Raiders. I get that. So the Raiders last year really struggled with run blocking from the offensive line standpoint. But I do think they're going to be better in that category by quite a big margin. I think them having Pete Carroll as their coach and them emphasizing, a certain run scheme is going to be helpful. I think having Geno Smith as a legitimate threat to pass the football is just naturally going to help the pass game as well. And overall, I think their offensive line just got better from what it was last year. But Ashton Jeanty is a generational talent. I did a lot of draft work this past offseason. I've never in my life seen a college running back with the type of skill set and the ability to do things that Ashton Jeanty's got. I mean, that's not an issue for him in terms of just absolutely being nails when it comes to him as a player. Another great thing is it's going to be his show, man. He is going to be the guy that's going to dominate the snaps, dominate the touches. He didn't do a lot in the past game in his final year at Boise, but the year before he had like 70 plus receptions. So he can win in the air as well. I think Ashton Jeanty's got a very, very good chance of finishing the season as RB1, to be completely honest with you, because he's got everything that you're looking for in a fantasy running back going for him. He's going to have the value. He's got the talent. The volume. He's got the talent. And he can win in the pass game and in the run game. So, yes, there's a lot of question marks, obviously, with the type of scheme and the offensive line that they have there in Las Vegas, but you cannot deny that Ashton Jeanty is unbelievably talented. So, for that reason, I think he's someone that's going to be incredibly, incredibly good for your fantasy team this year. I do believe he's going to be a first-round pick in many leagues as well. And, like I said, Ashton Jeanty, Devon Achane, I look at both of them as guys that can certainly rise as the offseason continues to go forward. And, we get a little bit more clarity as to how things are shaking out with a lot of these teams. So, big fan of Ashton Jeanty, even though obviously I'm a Bronco fan and I hate the Raiders, but that's going to be a really, really good fantasy situation for him. All right, moving on to number 4. And I think this is probably going to surprise a lot of people. And I understand if it does, man. But I am a sucker for Bucky Irving. I think he was phenomenal last year with Tampa. I get it. He's going to be splitting some time, right? They got Rachaad White there. We know what Rachaad White can do. But I think there's a really good chance that Rachaad White might be somebody that a team trades for. If Tampa feels like they got a lot of good runners on that team, which they do. They're pretty deep at running back overall. With Sean Tucker there as well. I think he's somebody that could be gone. And if that's the case, Bucky Irving is going to be one of the most sought after running backs. In the beginning part of the season, he was getting about 30 to 35% of the snaps, but then that became 68 to 72% of the snaps come December and January later on in the season. They really started to utilize him a lot more. The Buccaneers got a very good offensive line. All 5 of those guys are coming back. They're good run blockers. And, they're going to have, they got a good idea now of just what they have with Bucky Irving. They figured that out and they really started to utilize him. And when they did that, their offense just took off. But even in, not being the starter for a lot of the season last year, he was still, top 10 in a lot of key categories. One of them being receiving yards and receptions for running backs, 47 receptions for 392 yards. So that's all very positive. He was 14th in targets. And like I said, he wasn't even a full-time player until midway through the season. Addition to that, he was still top 20 in carries with 207 and top 10 in rushing yards with 1122. He had 8 touchdowns on the ground, a 5.4 yards per attempt average. Yes, that might go down. Obviously, as you get more, those things are more susceptible to go down. But he's someone that I just think is so damn good. 11th in the NFL in explosive runs of 10 plus, and he was number 1 in yards after contact per attempt. He's a make you miss guy, unbelievably talented, 22 years old, still a very young player. And typically running backs, man, when they get into their second year, that is when they truly shine. And Bucky Irving, in my opinion, he's got a well-rounded game. He's an incredibly talented runner, a good offensive scheme. He's got all these really good things going for him. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he's utilized moving forward as the full-time guy. But I believe he's going to be the full-time starter. And I'm just a big Bucky Irving fan. Like I said, this is still early rankings, but I think he's going to be that good. And I love drafting guys that can do it all and that are still very, very young and hungry for more going into year 2. Number 3, we're getting into the top 3 now, is going to be Saquon Barkley, man. I know a lot of people are thinking, how the hell is he not going to be number 1 and 2? I just truly believe that Madden curse might be a real thing. But consistently, man, anytime you have a running back that finishes the season, I don't think he actually ended up as RB1 in PPR leagues, but he was the best running back in football. They usually tend to regress. And I think it's probably in the Eagles' interest for them to not put the kind of workload on Saquon Barkley this year as they did last season. But, I mean, let's face it, one of the most talented runners in the entire NFL. Obviously, as you had seen, last year, 22.1 points per game, 15 touchdowns total, 11.4% target percentage, which is pretty good. still for a running back, but he's getting a little bit older, right? He is going to be entering his year 28 season. So sometimes you tend to see a little bit of a drop off, especially for backs like him that really get a heavy workload. But I don't always put that much emphasis on it because it kind of could be like lazy analysis and you don't want to always look too much into it. But he was someone that they didn't utilize as much in the pass game as I thought that they would. He had 33 catches for 278 yards through the air with 2 receiving touchdowns, but absolutely obliterated everybody when it came to running the football, right? Number 1 in snaps, number 1 in carries, number 1 in rush yards, obviously going over 2,000 yards. 13 rushing touchdowns, was 7th. He was 2nd in the NFL in yards per attempt. And, explosive runs by far and away number 1 with 46 explosive runs of 10 plus yards. So he's got all of the good metrics going for him. The Philadelphia Eagles have a dominant offensive line. He took full advantage of it. I think Saquon Barkley is going to have a very, very solid repeat performance, but I do expect a regression to some extent. Just because defenses are really going to key in on that. They're going to make sure they stack the boxes as much as they could. And one thing I will say about Saquon last year, as impressive as he was overall, especially from a fantasy standpoint specifically, there was a lot of games where if he didn't, it's hard to say. If he didn't have this 80-yard run, he would have had a really bad game because ultimately he did have them. But he was really, really dependent on those long plays. How sustainable that is really my biggest question mark going into the 2025 season, because there was a lot of games where, like I said, he wasn't really that efficient, and then bang, he breaks off a 70-yarder and he saves everybody's week. He ends up, spoiling a lot of weeks for other teams as well. So, you cannot really survive on that being very, very consistent. So that's kind of my big hesitation when it comes to running backs. But my philosophy in fantasy football specifically is always go after the young, talented running backs, the younger ones. But Saquon Barkley was just too good to leave out of the top 3 for obvious reasons. But I'm usually someone that would just say go after the young guys, because youth, it's a young man's league, especially at the running back position. All right, getting into my number 2, man, my second ranked running back this year in fantasy football is none other than Bijan Robinson, someone that, man, he's been so good in the first couple of years that he's been in the league. He really has just been unbelievably solid. But I always think he leaves fantasy owners yearning for more because you feel like there's always going to be more there. Obviously, they're a running back by committee, or they have been for the last couple of years in Atlanta. They've got Tyler Algier, who I think is one of the most underrated backup running backs. Definitely the number 1 handcuff going into every single year. And they do that to really try to limit him. But last year he played at least 70% of the offensive snaps, so you definitely saw the uptick. And he got at least 17 carries in 8 of 9 games, and averaged 22.4 points per game or PPR points during that stretch. So when he gets a high volume, he's someone that is very, very, very good. Sorry, I was just looking at one thing. That's not correct. So I'm glad that I double checked that. But again, why I love Bijan Robinson so much and why I think he's, you can even make the argument that he's the number 1 running back going into fantasy this year is a couple things. Firstly, he's still very young, 23 years old. It's kind of the sweet spot for these running backs. He was top 4 in the NFL in terms of carries, and he was also top 4 in the NFL in terms of targets. 2nd in the league in routes run, 3rd in receptions, right? And also 3rd in rushing yards. So just incredibly well-rounded, can beat you in the air, can beat you through the pass. 14 touchdowns, 1,456 yards last year on the ground, a 4.8 yards per attempt, which is ridiculous. 70 forced missed tackles. That's 2nd in the NFL. And 34 explosive runs of 10 plus yards. So I'm just giving you guys all these numbers. It is damn impressive what he can do. And again, that's just one part of his game. The other one, the fact that he can add so much in the pass game is huge. And I truly believe there's even more room for growth. 61 receptions last year, I think, is the absolute bare minimum for Bijan Robinson going into 2025. So he ups his receiving, and he continues to do what he does on the ground. And you've got somebody that's just unbelievably solid. mind the fact that he's shown that he can be very versatile, very durable as well in his NFL career so far. So, yeah, I love me some Bijan Robinson, super high on him. And the only reason I don't have him at number one is because the guy Jahmyr Gibbs is available, man. And I just might be a sucker for it. You can certainly talk me, into swapping out Jahmyr and Bijan as my 1 and 2 for this upcoming season. But watching Jahmyr Gibbs play running back is one of my favorite things as an NFL fan. He is just unbelievable when it comes to efficiency, running the football, quickness, shiftiness. He can truly do it all and takes maximum advantage of his opportunities. When David Montgomery went down, a lot of people thought it might affect him. How is he going to handle the full-time role? All he did was absolutely crush it, averaging 5.5 yards per attempt. Over the past 2 seasons, which is tied for second best amongst running backs. And he still, even in a running back by committee, he still gets a lot of touches. But when David Montgomery was out, he averaged 24.2 touches per game over the last 4 games of the season. And even without him, he's still touching the ball 16 times a game on average. But man, oh man, did he ever take advantage of that. And I don't know what the future is going to be like with David Montgomery. I think he's obviously going to be with the Lions still, but they might choose to really reduce his workload to give more to Jahmyr Gibbs, because when they give the ball to Gibbs, good things happen. It's crazy. He averaged 33.3 fantasy points per game when David Montgomery was not playing. And so I know that the Lions don't care about our fantasy. The Lions are going to do what's best for them. And having a David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs kind of 1-2 punch is the best thing for their offense. But no doubt about it, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to supersede David Montgomery as the starter. He's going to be getting a lot more touches moving forward. And if that's the case, that is dangerous, because you're not going to find a running back that is a better pure runner and explosive runner than Jahmyr Gibbs in the NFL. In my opinion, I think he's the best running back in the NFL already. Mix in the fact that he was number 1 last year in rushing touchdowns with 16, and that's with David Montgomery taking a lot. He was number 3 in yards per attempt. Doesn't fumble the ball a lot, forces a crazy amount of missed tackles. He was 3rd in explosive runs of 10 plus yards. And oh yeah, he was also 6th in receptions and 3rd in receiving yards, having 52 receptions for 517 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. Just ridiculous amounts of efficiency there. 20 total touchdowns, 12.1% target share. I only see that number potentially growing as the time goes on, because the Detroit Lions are realizing, man, that Jahmyr Gibbs is just way too good to not give the ball to. So I'm a sucker for Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. And then also add in the fact, too, guys, that Detroit's got an amazing offensive line. Even when they had all those injuries, Jahmyr Gibbs was still out there killing it. And they run a lot of offense. I'm not really overly concerned about Ben Johnson leaving. I think that, if anything, all it's going to do is allow for them to emphasize running the ball more, because when you have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs on your team, you need to give those guys the football. So that's going to be a big thing for him. So I got Jahmyr Gibbs as my number 1 running back. So to give you guys a recap of my top 10 early fantasy football rankings for running backs, we got Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Bucky Irving, and Ashton Genty in the top 5. Devon Achane at 6, Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, and Derrick Henry rounding out the top 10. Let me know what you guys think below. I appreciate you guys tuning in, man. This is my first full fantasy video, so I know it probably had a little bit of quirks, but I always am appreciative of your feedback in the comments. But let me know below what you guys' thoughts are, and take it easy, man. Till the next video. Peace.